Welcome everyone to a very, very special day before Veterans Day presentation about veterans benefits available to you. This presentation is being done by our friend Marcie Johnson at the Johnson Firm Attorneys at Law. She better tell you about herself and her dad and their firm, because it's kind of a super, super cool thing that they have going on there. But we have 32 people registered for today, so thank you all for joining us. And I think that being said, I am going to turn the camera over to Marcie. I'm going to mute everyone. If you do have questions during the event, please don't be afraid to put those in your chat, and I will read those out to Marcie. We can either, if something relevant comes up during the presentation, I might ask then, or I may hold questions till the end, but feel free to just put those in as they come up. So I'm going to mute everyone now. Marcie, we'll need to unmute yourself. Okay.
Okay.
And then I'm going to turn the camera over to you.
Thanks. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. As Zoe said, happy Veterans Day early. And I'm just so thrilled to be able to talk to you about some benefits to help our veterans. And I wanted to ask just quickly, I'm trying to look at all your faces. How many veterans do we have on the call today? Oh, we've got several. Oh, good. Well, our spouses of veterans? Well, thank you so much for your service. We really appreciate it. And so today is really about honoring you. And what I'd like to do is just share with you some benefits that our veterans and their families may be eligible for, and just kind of dispel some myths about VA benefits. And so what I'm going to do is share my screen with you, maybe. Please bear with me. I am still somewhat of a novice when it comes to Zoom. And I try not to be, but can y'all see that okay? Can you just nod if you can see? Okay, good, thank you. Well, so to tell you a little bit about me and my firm. So my name again is Marcie Johnson, and I am an estate planning and elder law attorney here in Richardson. And I know some of you are out of state, but those of you familiar with the Dallas area, I'm at George Bush and 75, if you know where that that intersection is. And what makes my firm different, distinguishes it from other people's firms, is that we are a family firm. My partner, who I've been with forever, but my partner that I've partnered with for 15 years is my dad. And so he does traditionally estate planning, is board certified. And so we do wills and trusts and general asset protection. But so that's one aspect of our firm. But the other aspect is what my focus is on elder planning. And what I mean by elder planning, a lot of people have different definitions of elder law, but for me, it's helping seniors position themselves so that they don't lose all their assets to pay for long-term care. And there are several ways that we can do that. The two main ways that I work with is getting people qualified for Medicaid if you're going into a nursing home, or veterans benefits. And today our focus is really just going to be on veterans benefits, but Medicaid planning and veterans benefits, the pension plan, a lot of the planning techniques overlap. So you will get a little bit of a tease towards what you can do for Medicaid planning, because the processes are similar. But before I go on, I know that I see a lot of you have got your notepads out, and I just really appreciate you wanting to take notes as we talk today. I want to point out at the bottom of the screen that you see is our website. It's www.johnsonfirmpc.com. And the reason why I'm bringing that to you, not only so you can find out more about us, but on our website, I have a book, and I don't know if you can see this in my Zoom camera. This is a book. It's called Helping Veterans Pay for Long-Term Care. And everything that I'm going to be talking about and all the numbers that I'm going to be sharing with you is found in this book. So if you miss something or want to go back and see the numbers again, I highly encourage you to download this. It's a free download. And I believe when you go to our website, it just says download our books. And we've got some on Medicaid planning, VA planning, estate planning. But when I call it a book, it's not really a book. It's more like a pamphlet. I think it's 12 pages long and it's got lots of pictures. So it's not a heavy read at all. So, but I wrote these books for my clients because there's a lot of misinformation out there about these different programs. And so I wrote it to where, you know, the families that come and ask me questions, it's to answer those questions for them. And so I just encourage you to look at that if you would. But let's go ahead and get started. Now, as Zoe said,
I have a question that came up already, Marcie.
All right.
So they were asking, sorry, let me turn that down so you don't hear my phone. So the book that you wrote for the veterans information, does that apply to any veterans in the United States or just in Texas?
The Veterans Program is a federal program, so it applies to anyone in the United States. Unlike Medicaid, which is a federal program run by the states, Medicaid rules are different in each state. So Texas rules are different than California, or New York, Pennsylvania, but VA rules are the same in all 50 states.
Perfect.
So thank you so much for that question. I want to make sure that that's clear. And I was going to say, as Zoe said, I am not looking at the chat box. So if you are asking questions, she's more than welcome to interrupt me. If you would just please give me the grace. If you're asking me a question that I know that I'm going to hit in detail in just a minute and a couple of slides, if you will please, I may say, just hold on to that question. I'm going to answer it or go into more detail. So I definitely will get to it. This is your time, and I want to make sure that you understand what's available for you. So I'll be here as long as you need me to answer.
Yeah. And what I'll do, Marcie, too, to help out is like we have a question that just came in that I know you're going to hit on. So I'll hold off on asking those unless you don't, and then I'll ask them at the end. Okay.
Of course.
Great.
Well, before we start talking about veterans benefits, I want us to all be on the same page. And to do that, I just want to give you just a little brief background so we kind of have some perspective of why we're even talking about this. And Celebrations is a mature magazine and for our seniors. And so this is something that's very dear. You may not be facing this now, but maybe your parents are or another relative. But at some time, all of us are going to be facing some sort of long-term care issue. So I always say it's always better to talk about it now and pre-plan for it than to be surprised later on. So when a family comes to me to talk about long-term care planning, I say, generally, there are 3 ways that you can pay for care. You can private pay, and that's what most people think that they're going to do, that they're going to pay out of their own assets and savings that they've spent a lifetime to build. They're just going to pay their own way. Maybe you're fortunate enough that you have family members that are children who have offered to help supplement that care or for you to move in with them. But most of us think that we're going to private pay for that care. But I'm going to show you some numbers here in just a minute where you might want to reconsider that, only because when you consider the cost, it can be very expensive. So if we don't want to private pay, or maybe we're okay with private paying for a little while, but are there other options that we could look at? One is buying long-term care insurance. Now, again, the focus of this presentation today is not on these other solutions. However, if you have at all looked at long-term care insurance or were curious about long-term care insurance, I encourage you to look into it. A lot of people, though, think that it's too expensive, which it is expensive. But also maybe you're at a position where you've already had a health issue and maybe you're not insurable. So long-term care insurance may or may not be on an available possibility for you. Of course, if you're at all interested, I highly recommend you looking into it. And if you need some names of, I think, Zoe, you were mentioning a while ago, perhaps the person that y'all were mentioning earlier can provide some help with long-term care, but if not,
yes, I believe they do offer that also.
So there's lots of people out there, but if you need some names, I'd be glad to give them to you. But if long-term care is not on the table for us either, then we have to look at governmental programs, and there's 3 of them, main ones: Medicare, Medicaid, and veterans pension planning. I'll tell you right now, if you don't already know, that Medicare is very limited, and do not plan on it for paying for your long-term care needs. It will pay for a short stint of time, about 100 days of acute care, but after that, you're going to be private paying your own way. So don't rely on Medicare to pay for your long-term care. Medicaid, I do a whole workshop, about an hour and a half workshop just on Medicaid. And so I have talked about Medicaid with Celebrations Magazine before. So maybe at some point, if that's of interest to you, we could come back and talk about that. And again, my books that are free download on my website also talk about those as well. But today we're going to focus on Veterans Pension. Tomorrow's Veterans Day, and we've got veterans on this call. So let's get into Veterans Pension planning. Well, and as we do that, I just want to show you this slide because I thought it was important, maybe an eye-opener for some of you, and maybe this is old news to you, but I looked up a study of Genworth, which is an insurance company, of the average cost of long-term care in Texas. And this is what they said. They're saying that a nursing home for, oh, did I do that? I guess I moved my mouse. I apologize. For a semi-private room is about $5,000. For a private room is $6,600. They say for assisted living is about $3,800 a month. Home health $4,100, and adult daycare $725. Looking at these numbers, because this is an average in Texas, I will be honest, I think this is a little low, these numbers.
I would agree.
Taking into account your West Texas towns and maybe your East Texas, your rural communities, because in the Metroplex, I would say that these numbers are about $1,000, well, $800 to $1,000 too low. Because I would say nursing home, my clients are looking for nursing home, it's about $600 to $6,500. For assisted living, it's probably $4,500 to $5,500. So really, if you didn't know before, I just want to open your eyes that long-term residential care living can be expensive. And that brings me to maybe my next slide. Pardon me. Don't judge me on my computer skills, please. Let's just look at nursing home, for example. So if a nursing home costs $6,000 a month, that's roughly $72,000 a year. And if you're married, that does not include the living expenses for the well spouse. So if you're in a situation where one of you needs skilled nursing and one of you doesn't, you could easily be spending $90,000 to $100,000 a year for living expenses and for care. And that could just wipe out your whole life savings in just a few years. So if you think about your own nest egg that you have now, unfortunately, if you have an event in which you need care, that money can dwindle quickly, a lot faster than it took to earn it. So, is there something else that we can do? And that's where benefits come into play, like Medicaid, but especially today, for assisted living or at-home care, we could be looking at veterans benefits. And so I want to go into more detail. don't know why it's doing this. I apologize. About the veterans pension benefits. Now, like I said, this is a federal program, but there's really two types of disability payments. Now, VA will pay for some housing, they'll pay for some burial, they'll pay for some medical, but the two programs that provide a monthly payment back to the veteran are really broken into two camps. You've got compensation and you've got pension. Now, compensation is a service-connected disability. That means you got hurt, your illness or your disability can be traced back to your time spent in the military. And you have doctor's records to substantiate that the issues that you're having now come from your time during service. So it's injury during service. Now, compensation is not limited to how much, there's no requirement that you make a certain amount of money or that you don't. You just have to show that your disability relates back to your time in service. We are not going to talk about compensation today because that is a completely different animal. We're going to talk today about pension, the VA pension planning. And what I like about the VA pension planning is it's not service connected. Your disabilities or problems that you're having now do not have to relate back to your time in service. It's just a pension. It's a monthly tax-free check to veterans or surviving spouses to help pay for their long-term care costs. And I'm going to go into the details of what it's required in order to get these benefits, but it is means tested, which means it's based on your income and your assets have to fall within certain ranges in order to get this benefit. But I'm going to give you a caveat now and say that as I go through these slides and you see these numbers, please do not count yourself out if you realize that your assets or income do not fall within these ranges, because I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people looking at this benefit do, because just because these are the numbers doesn't mean there's not a solution to get your assets within these numbers. So I just ask if you would please just have an open mind as we go through this, because I think you'll be surprised at some of the things we can do for this benefit. But the purpose of the pension really was to keep veterans or their surviving spouses from becoming impoverished paying for their long-term care. So this is a supplemental tax-free income that comes every single month for the rest of your life to help pay for your long-term care. So it's a great benefit. So we're going to go into these requirements in more detail in just a minute, but in a nutshell, you've got to have wartime active duty. So for veterans to be eligible for this program, they have to have served active duty. So the reserves, if you were just in the reserves, that's not going to count. So you need to have served in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, just not reserves, active duty, or you're a surviving spouse of someone who served during wartime with active duty. We've got to have medical expenses. That's another issue here. And again, if you don't have medical expenses now, that's okay. We can create some medical expenses. So you have to have medical expenses. We have to have assistance that is needed. So in order to get this pension, we have to have a doctor's note. And we can talk more about that in just a minute, but we've got to have assistance. And it's based on your household income and assets. Now, there's 3 classifications for pension. Most of you probably have heard this pension called the aid and attendance pension. And the reason why it's called that is because that's the highest level of pension, and anyone who's trying to get this pension is going to aim for the highest amount because it pays the most. So a lot of people just call it aid and attendance. Really, aid and attendance is just one of 3 classifications of the pension. You have basic, which is the lowest, housebound, and then aid and attendance. So if you hear it called aid and attendance, of course, that's the one we're trying to get, but it's just one classification out of 3. So just to show you, there are so many people that could be eligible for this program that it's just unreal. And unfortunately, it's just underutilized. I talk to so many people that don't know about the pension program, or they have misconceptions about it. And I do know that there's a lot of confusing information out there. It's hard to get information. There's a lot of misinformation. But if you'll look here, this is just to show you who could be eligible. So right now, there's about 392,000 World War II vets that are still alive. For the Korean War, we've got 2.5 million veterans that are still living. And for the Vietnam War, we've got over 7 million. And that does not include surviving spouses. So probably, even if this benefit, if you're not eligible for this benefit, probably you know someone, or you have a relative or a close friend that could be eligible for this benefit. So I encourage you to share this information with them, because it's just a wonderful program, and it's just been a godsend for so many of my clients. So let's get into the requirements. And we talked about this just a little bit. Now, I describe these as tests. There's 3 tests that you have to pass. Now, you won't find these tests listed anywhere, but this is how my mind works and how I break things up to make it easier to understand. So I say, okay, there's a service test. And the service test is that you had to have served 90 days active duty. And just one day had to be during a time of war. And you had to be discharged from anything other than dishonorable. Now, when I say it had to be during wartime, that does not mean that you saw combat. It just means that somewhere in the world, there was a combat going on. So you could have been stationed here in, I had a client that was stationed in California, and it was during wartime. He was in active duty, but he never saw war. But he's still eligible because there was a war going on at the time that he was in active duty. So that's the service test. Now, here are the actual dates of wartime, according to the VA. They're a little bit different, especially for World War II, than what you might think. So the actual dates, if you look at your DD 214, that's your discharge papers from the military. If one day falls within this range, then and you meet the other requirements, then you'd be eligible. So World War II, we've got December 7th, 1941 through December 31st, 1946. For the Korean War, June 27th, 1950 through January 31st, 1955. Vietnam is a little different. The normal dates are August 5th, 1964 through May 7th, 1975. However, if you were serving in Vietnam before August 6, 1964, then your dates are a little different. And it's February 28, 1961 through May 7, 1975. Now, I don't have the Gulf War dates on here because technically we are still in that war. But if you do know a veteran that served during Gulf War, their rules are just a little bit different. Instead of 90 days active duty, 90 days active duty, 1 day during wartime, they have to serve for consecutive of 2 years. So their rules are a little bit different. And I haven't run across that many veterans that are looking for the pension that are in the Gulf War. So that really hasn't been the focus of our efforts. But again, know that if you do know someone who did serve during the Gulf War, they could be eligible for these benefits if they meet the difference requirements.
So real quick, Marcie, what about the Cold War? Someone asked about the Cold War. That would be Vietnam and Korea times?
They're not. The VA does not recognize the Cold War.
Okay.
As there was no there was no active military campaign. That's an interesting question, but VA right now does not recognize the Cold War. They just recognize World War II, Korean, and Vietnam.
Yeah, because the person said 59 to 61, so probably not then. Yeah.
If you don't fit, so within these. But let me tell you this. So I was stealing my thunder just a little bit. But if you do not qualify, if you're looking at this list, this is the one slide that if you don't fit within these dates, then VA is not viable for you. But there are other things that you can look at. So I'll talk about those later. But if you're looking and you look at your service time and it does not fall within the VA's dates of war, just know we can look at other types of planning. VA benefits will not be available for the pension for you, but we can look at Medicaid planning and other types of solutions to help protect your assets from long-term care. It's just that the VA pension won't be the program that you'd be eligible for. So if you already see that you're disqualified because of when you served during war, I encourage you to keep listening, because a lot of these solutions that we're going to talk about do apply for other programs, like I said earlier, and we can get you positioned for governmental benefits through another program.
Perfect.
Yeah. So let's keep going. So then we have an asset test. So like I said, for pension, your assets, in order to apply for the pension, we have to have less than $129,094 in countable assets. Now, countable is a key word, and that comes from the Medicaid world. And so if there are countable assets, that means there are some things that aren't countable. So what's not countable is your house, a car, and your personal effects. So to break this out a little bit, so you could have a $500,000 home, or $1 million home. There's no equity limit on the house. So you could have a $500,000 home and just have $129,000 in the bank, and you would meet the asset test. So it does not include a car. It doesn't matter what type of car, a home, or personal effects. Is that popping up on my screen? Sorry. Oh my goodness, I apologize. Are y'all seeing that? My computer is going nuts there.
It's okay, do not worry.
There we go. So it does not include a home, car, personal effects. So again, but if you have just $1 too much, if you have $129,095 for 2020, technically you wouldn't be eligible. But of course we could spend that down. But these numbers change every year. They go up with inflation. So if you looked at this program a couple of years ago, the rules were completely different. This entire VA program was overhauled in 2018, but we're expecting the new numbers to come out any day. So I expect this to go up probably at least $600 or $700, maybe even $1,000. But once those numbers come out, so starting in January, we'll have the new numbers, and that will be the new asset limit. So we have to have less than $129,094. Again, that doesn't include our home, our car, or personal effects. Now, this is where a lot of people get hung up, and it's the income test. So I want to spend some time talking about this. So when I call the income test, remember this VA pension is for, the purpose of the pension is to keep veterans' families from becoming impoverished to pay for their long-term care. So to be eligible for this program, we have to show that your income from all sources, Social Security, pension, RMDs from IRAs, annuity payments, all the income that you receive is less than what you're paying out in unreimbursed medical expenses. Now, what's an unreimbursed medical expense? It's something that's not covered by insurance. Examples of that would be your health insurance premiums, including if you do have long-term care insurance, it would be those premiums. If you are currently paying a caregiver to take care of you or a loved one, that is an unreimbursed medical expense. If you're already in assisted living, that's a medical expense. Same with skilled nursing. So let's break this down into an example. So let's say that the veteran is single, they're getting $1,500 a month in Social Security, and that's the only income they're bringing in. Well, if they're in an assisted living facility and they're paying $4,500 a month, that's more than the $1,500 they're bringing in. So they meet this income test. Now, there are some unreimbursed medical expenses that a lot of you don't even realize you're paying. I don't know if you realize, but when you get your Social Security deposit every month, that is a net deposit. It is not the gross amount, because for most of you, you're paying for Medicare Part B, and that's $144.60. So when you get your deposit in your bank account, the $144.60 has already been taken out. So that's an unreimbursed medical expense. Your health insurance premiums, if you're paying $375 in, I'm just making up numbers here, but for a health insurance supplemental plan, you know, when we add up all your unreimbursed medical, your health insurance, the Medicare Part B that you didn't even realize you were paying for, you know, assisted living or caregiver costs, a lot of you are paying a lot more than you may think you are in unreimbursed medical expenses. But in order to get qualified for this program, we have to show that we're upside down in our expenses, that we don't have enough income to cover our expenses. And this has to be shown before we apply. And I'm sure a lot of you all have some questions on that, but a lot of people, like I said, a lot of people look at this and say, oh, well, I don't have those unreimbursed medical expenses, so I don't qualify. But there are ways that we can maybe change that. So just bear with me.
So this brings up a question that I have actually, Marcie, because many moons ago when we first met, I was working in assisted living. So, you know, things have obviously changed since then, but I used to assist families with exploring the aid and attendance possibility to help pay for care. Do they still not count medication costs as a unreimbursable medical expense? Because it used to be you couldn't use your cost of your medications in that tally. Is that still true, or has that changed?
It's tricky.
Okay.
So as a general, this is just my personal practice, is if I can get your unreimbursed medical expenses without using medications, I will do so.
Okay.
Because you have to prove to the VA that this prescription drug you have to have for the rest of your life, that it's never going to change.
Okay.
So if it's something that fluctuates or you're only going to be taking it for a period of time, you can't count it.
Got it.
Because you're trying to get this benefit for the rest of your life, they want you to prove through doctor's notes that you have to have this medication for the rest of your life in order to count the prescription drugs. So prescription drugs are a little shady. Not to say you can't use them in order to get the benefit, but
there's guidelines.
If I can get it another way, I like to use something that's a little bit more substantial.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, let's keep going, and we're trucking through. So then we have a health test. So in order to get this benefit, you had to either be disabled or assistance is needed. Now I have disabled in quotes because that's disabled as defined by the VA. And disability defined by the VA is you are presumed disabled if you are age 65 or older. Doesn't that make you feel good? For those seniors out there, if you're over 65, you're presumed disabled. But what that means is, if you're 65 or older, then you're presumed disabled and you meet the health test. But so if you were only disabled and needed no other assistance, and let me back up. If you're only 65 or older and didn't need any other assistance, you could still be eligible for the base level pension. But as we look at this list, for every activity of daily living that you cannot perform, if you can get up to 2, then you're eligible for the aid and attendance. So if there's only 1 that we can't perform, then we're looking at aiming for the base pension or the homebound, the housebound pension level. But if there's 2 activities of daily living that you cannot perform, then we can try for the highest level of pension, which is the aid and attendance, which is what we're all trying to get anyway. So for the health test, disabled, meaning you're over 60, you're 65 or older, or you need assistance in one of these areas. You need help dressing or undressing. You need help bathing. You need help if you've got some incontinence issues, inability to stand or walk without assistance, just if you need help getting out of a chair and going across the room, if you use a cane, if you use a walker, if you can't feed yourself, hand to mouth, you can't feed yourself. Some other things they take into consideration is medication management, if you're a fall risk. So this is where the doctor's letter comes in. So we have to get a doctor's letter when we send in the application, and they can really shed light on what we can and can't do. But what we're looking for is if you need help at all and need what's called a protected environment, you need some oversight. Not that you can't do things on your own, but you may need some assistance here and there, then that's going to really push us towards being able to get this benefit. And so this slide just kind of goes, I wish I could have pulled up both slides at the same time. But like I said, if you're just over 65, this kind of shows the range of money generically. So your improved base pension is you're just 65 or older, so you're considered disabled. Your income is less than your unreimbursed medical and your assets are under 129,000, then you'd be eligible for this improved base pension. If your income is less than your unreimbursed medical, your assets are in range, but you can only perform it and you only need to help with 1 activity of daily living, then maybe we're looking at this housebound pension. But if there's at least 2 of them or more that you can't perform, then we can look at the aid and attendance. So this is just a diagram to show you that. So I want to show you just some of the money that's available for this year. And like I said earlier, this amount's going to change here in another month. But what I've got highlighted at the bottom, because like I said, all these different levels provide different monetary amounts, but as I said, we're always going to aim for the aid and attendance if we can get it. So if you're a single veteran, we're looking at potentially getting $1,911 a month, tax-free money for the rest of your life. That's an extra $22,939 a year. If you're married, we're looking at $2,266 a month, or up to $27,195 extra tax-free money a year for the rest of your life and for your spouse's life. So you can see just by having this extra money coming in, I mean, that could make the difference between you being able to stay at home and have a caregiver come in versus moving up to the next level of care. So this is, like I said, is just such a wonderful benefit if you can get it to help ease the burden of the cost of care. And so, how do we get it? What do we do? So those are the numbers for this year. For the surviving spouse. Now, the surviving spouse, the veteran who they're claiming under has to have met the criteria that we talked about earlier. However, you have to be married to the veteran at the time of their death, but you did not have to be married to the veteran at the time that they served. So just an example, you could be the veteran's second husband or second wife, and when they pass away, you can claim benefits on their military service. So again, they did not have to serve in a combat zone, just one day during wartime, 90 days active duty, anything other than dishonorable. And you'll see the monthly pension for an attendance for a surviving spouse is about half what it is for the veteran, but still an extra $1,228 a month or $14,000 a year is nothing to slough off. It's definitely, it can be a life changer for a lot of families. So that's the survivor's pension and the death pension. Those are the numbers.
I had someone ask about the marriage side of things. If your current if it's your current marriage, does it matter whether it's the first, second, etc.?
No, it doesn't. You do have to provide proof to the VA of the legitimacy of those marriages. So I had a client that she'd been married 5 times. I had to provide divorce decrees for 5 marriages in order for her to get the benefit. And the reason why VA is asking for that is they don't want to accidentally pay 2 different spouses on the same veteran. So it's just a precaution to make sure that no one else is going to come back and illegitimately claim benefits. So if you were married before and your husband or wife passed away, then we need to provide a death certificate to show that they've passed.
Okay.
But no, this can be your second or third marriage, or you just can't have been divorced from the veteran and try to claim benefits on them.
Right. And it doesn't matter if you weren't married to them. As long as you're currently married, it doesn't matter if you weren't married while they served,
right,
correct?
Right,
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And yes. So what do we do if we don't qualify? So I'm just going to go through a couple examples. I'm going to draw your eyes to the bottom right of my screen. And, we talked about earlier, no wartime service. So as I said before, if you did not meet the wartime service or your spouse doesn't meet the wartime service, this benefit is not going to be, you're not going to be eligible for this benefit, but that's okay because there are other benefits that we can look at. So I would consider, we could talk about Medicaid planning in that instance. But if you do meet the requirements for military service, then let's go through some of these scenarios and see how we might address them. So what if you have too many assets? You've got a home, you got a car, but you've got $400,000 in the bank, not $129,000. What do we do with that extra money? Well, there's a couple things we can do, and there's no right or wrong answer here. It's just what makes most sense for your family. Depending on how much more we have than the limit, maybe we private pay until we spend down. If we're only a couple thousand over, perhaps we can purchase what they call exempt assets. So there are some things that you can buy that Medicaid and VA will not count against you. If you haven't bought your prepaid burial plan, that's a way to spend down, depending on the type of funeral arrangements that you want to have, but easily $15,000 a piece. It's going to have to be paid sometime. If you want to go ahead and purchase that now, that's a way to get your assets down closer to within limit, and us also be using that money on something for you. A car, I mentioned before, is exempt. So for a lot of my clients, if they have an older, even a 5 or 6 year old car, maybe they want to trade it in for a newer model. There's no, I say there's no limit. If you bought, if you bought a Lexus or a BMW or, an SUV, I mean, we could easily spend $70,000, $80,000 on a car, and they wouldn't think twice about it. Now, if we were buying Aston Martins or a McLaren or, a Ferrari or something like that, they may raise their eyebrows at that. But, any type of luxury car, if you wanted to buy a luxury car, that's a way to get rid of $60,000, $70,000 quickly on an asset that is not counted for VA or Medicaid. Also for VA, there's no equity limit to the house. So these are extreme examples, but the reason why I'm bringing these up is just to let you think outside the box. So, you know, if we had 200,000 too much, then we might think about buying a bigger home or remodeling a home. You know, because there's no equity limit, you could go out and buy a new home and then get this benefit. So, I mean, there's just lots of different options, and there's no right or wrong answer here, and it all depends. Every family is different. And so if you have too many assets, the point of this slide is that don't automatically rule yourself out, because there are things that we can do. So you can purchase exempt assets, you can private pay till you spend down to get within limits. Two other things that you can do: you can gift assets away. And if you ask your neighbor, that's probably what, that's the word on the street, what people say, well, just get the money away and wait 3 years. Now, for those of you who haven't looked at this benefit in a while, used to be, before 2018, there was no penalty for gifting away. So what we would do is we would gift assets away and the next day apply for VA. VA changed those rules on October 18th, 2018. And so now any transfers that are made after that date, we've got a 3-year penalty of wait time. So you can gift your assets away, wait 3 years, and then apply for the benefit. The problem with that, and why I don't recommend that, is because what if the person you gave it to, probably a family member, what if they lost it? What if you gave $150,000 to your child and said, okay, I'm giving this to you, we're gonna wait 3 years and I'm gonna apply for the benefit. And then they go through a divorce, your kid does, or they have a car accident, it's their fault, they get sued, and they lose that money for you and them. And then, you know, what do you do? So if you are thinking about doing a gifting strategy, what I recommend, the safe way to do it, is to create an irrevocable asset protection trust.
A yoga teacher that teaches.
Is that coming from me? I don't think so. Okay, sorry. I just thought that was background.
No, thank you for pointing it out.
No, I just thought, sorry. So you can create an irrevocable asset protection trust. And the reason why I like these trusts is because you can transfer perhaps a large sum of assets to this trust. It can be managed by your kids or someone that you have faith in, but it's given to them in a way in which they can't lose it and you can't lose it either. And we can talk about this more in detail, and I'll talk about it a little bit in my book. But if you take these assets, you move it to a protected environment. Say you've got 500,000 too much. So we take the 500,000, we move it to an irrevocable trust in which maybe kids manage. They manage those assets. We wait 3 years, and then when you apply for benefits, VA only looks back 3 years. So as long as this transfer happened outside the 3-year window, we're legitimately telling the VA that these are the assets that we have in our name. By your own rules, you've decided you're only going to look back 3 years. So if I do anything outside that 3-year look back, I've protected those assets. So that is a way to protect assets, make sure they don't go through probate, and also position you to get benefits later on down the road. So for my clients who don't need assistance right now, and they're looking at ways to protect assets because they know long-term care may be in their future, but if we've got 3 years or more before we really think we're going to need to really get into those assets, then this is a perfect time to take those assets, move it to protected environment, and wait those 3 years. And then once those 3 years are passed, then once our health becomes at issue and we need to apply for these benefits, then your assets are in range. And so that's one of the biggest tools that we use for getting eligible for VA benefits. The benefit also of moving your assets to an irrevocable trust is, while you only have to wait 3 years for VA, if you keep it in there for 5 years, then if your health decreased such that you needed skilled nursing care and you needed Medicaid, you would have moved your assets already and they would be protected. So when you applied for Medicaid, Medicaid wouldn't be looking at those assets either. So one thing I really like about the VA benefits is if you are concerned about skilled nursing care, VA benefits are a great stopgap because VA will pay, it's a tax-free income that comes in, and it can help you stay in place. You can have the caregiver come into your house and get the extra money from the VA to pay for it. If you need assisted living, you can get the extra money to pay for assisted living. But once you go into skilled nursing, at that point, usually Medicaid is the route that you want to go because it will pay more than what the VA will. So by positioning your assets now, when the waters are calm, if we can wait 3 years, we can get the VA benefit. And if we can wait 5 years, we can get the Medicaid benefit. So the question really becomes, how much do you want to protect and when do you want the protection to start? Now, again, it's different with every family, but depending on what your assets are and how they're structured, this is just a good way to move your assets and protect them and still be eligible for benefits later on. And then, so let's talk about what if you have too much income. So what if your assets are within range? You have less than 129,000 in assets, maybe you have a house, but you don't have enough unreimbursed medical expenses. Your income is still more than what you're paying out for insurance premiums or a caregiver. Well, there's a lot of things that we can do. A lot of times it may be just as simple as changing health insurance policies to get a higher premium. It depends on how much we're over or under, how much more income we have than our unreimbursed medical expenses. But like I said, maybe it's just as simple as adding a Medicare Part D plan or a supplemental plan to our health insurance. But I will say for a lot of my clients, if you've already got family members who are helping you at home with chores and taking you to doctor's appointments and maybe getting food for you and helping with things around the house, you've got a walker or a cane. A lot of times we can create a caregiver agreement with a family member in which we pay a family member what we would pay a third party to provide for our care and give us oversight. So a lot of times we can create unreimbursed medical expenses where none existed because we don't always look at our family members as being caregivers. It's just what they do because they're family. But they're under no legal obligation to provide us that care. So if we paid them for that care, we can create unreimbursed medical expenses and sometimes get this benefit. So really, like I said, the purpose of this slide is just to hopefully, if I've done my job, I've opened your eyes to show these are the rules. This is how you apply, but there's some things that you can do if you're not eligible. If you plan enough in advance, we can position you so that you can get qualified. If not now, at a later date. So I know I went through that. I don't know about you. Honestly, oh shoot, I'm right on time. I was running a little late. I thought I was early. To me, it was short. So to me, that was a really short presentation. So I apologize if I know I went over my time a little bit, but
Marcie, like I said, I'll never cut you off and I'll keep going.
Sorry. Well,
we got questions too.
So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer this for you. And again, I encourage you to look at our book, and it has all the same information that I just gave you, and it's a free download. And if anyone wants to come in and talk about, does this make sense for my family? What I do is as a thank you to Celebration for having me on, and the relationship that we have. If anyone from any of these workshops who Zoom and Learns it, if you want to know more about this, then I'm going to waive my initial consultation fee. because I've already pre-educated you on the VA benefit. So I don't want you to ever be afraid to call an attorney to talk about this. So if any of this makes sense, or you want to find out more and you have some specific questions for your case individually, I can't give specific advice today, but if you had some specific questions, I'm not going to charge you for initial consultation. And if you would just when you call our office, which our number's down here at the bottom, if you want to call our office, just say that you saw me on a Zoom Alert, and I'd be glad to talk to you more about that. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm going to take a drink of water because I've been talking a lot. Is there anything that I can help dispel or answer?
We do have a couple questions, and I've also, just so everyone is aware, I have put in their phone number and their website into the chat for them. So, all right. So I'm going to come back up here. Okay. Okay. If the vet didn't access the benefits, can the surviving spouse apply? Okay.
Yes. So just because your spouse didn't apply for the benefit and they were the veteran, if you're the surviving spouse, you can apply for the benefit as long as they were eligible for the benefit, even though they didn't take advantage of it. As long as they meet those, as long as you as a surviving spouse meet those requirements, being under 129,000, your income's under your unreimbursed medical, and they meet the service requirements, then you can apply for that benefit.
Okay. And this is actually a question that I had, and I'm going to expand on this one myself. So someone said, should you wait till you need assistance before filing for the VA benefit? And then I have a follow-up question to that one.
So you cannot, let me make sure I understand. You cannot apply for this benefit unless you show that you need assistance. So can you expand on if you need the benefit? So,
well, they said, do you wait till you need assistance? But I guess my question would be, so being 65 counts you as disabled, okay, and could qualify you for the basic pension is what you were saying, right?
Right.
As your needs for activities of daily living increase, are you able to revisit and get more?
No. So the pension amount is the same.
Okay.
Well, let me take that. If you applied and just got base, and then your health, and then your activities of daily living, your need for help increase, yes, you can get up to the aid and attendance, but you can never get more than the maximum amount for aid and attendance.
Right. Perfect.
What I would recommend, for example, a lot of people don't realize this. If you have handlebars in your shower to hold on to, and you hold on to those, I would argue that you need help with bathing and showering because you are a fall risk. If you have neuropathy, just because you can get around fine with a cane or assistance doesn't mean that you don't need assistance.
Right.
For a lot of families, if their spouse or their children were not here to watch after them, then they would need to be in a different residential setting. So just because you are coping with current circumstances does not mean that you don't need assistance. So there are
lots of gray areas.
Lots of gray areas, but there's lots of, with the doctor's letter, as long as we can substantiate our claims, then, a lot of people need assistance in ways that they didn't realize would count for VA.
Right.
So, of course, if you have absolutely nothing wrong and there's no help needed, maybe we do wait. And maybe if your assets are too high, maybe we go ahead and position them so that the 3 years clock has started. And then we know that once your health does decline such that you need some help, then we can apply. But that question was there was a lot.
It's a tough question. Yeah.
So the answer to that is it depends.
So then my answer to that for Marcie would be, if you want to know for your particular circumstances, what is best for you to do would be to call her and set up that consultation, because she'll be able to give you a firm, yes, this is what you should be doing, or no, now's not the time, but she'll let you know for sure for your particular case.
Sure.
So yeah. The other thing, I do have someone, so I'm sure you heard me mention we have a couple people who are from outside of the state
Yeah.
of Texas.
Mhm.
Would you be willing to assist someone and consult with someone outside of Texas?
I
How
can,
does-
I can, depending on where they are, I could refer them to a VA specialist in that. I can't do any legal work for them
Right.
in another state,
Right.
but if they needed legal work and they needed the application
Okay.
presented, then yeah, I can either help them or I can get them in touch with someone who can.
Perfect. That would be wonderful. We've got,
Sure.
we've got California and Georgia with us. So.
Oh, well, I can tell you right now, I know someone in Georgia and California. So
Perfect.
yeah, I can.
All right. Well, there you go, guys. So,
Sure.
that is pretty much all the questions. I have to say though, let me wait. Hang on. Bob said, all right, we got a question. What if the spouse is in need of assistance before the veteran? Does that count?
So great question. Technically, the benefit is for the veteran. The spouse may inadvertently benefit from getting the pension amount, but the rate of pension that you receive is based on the veteran, not the spouse. So if your spouse is the one in assisted living and the veteran is the one at home, it's going to be based on the veteran at home. We can include the unreimbursed medical expenses from the spouse in our qualification, but the rate of how much you receive is going to be based on the veteran's health, not the spouse's health. Now, if we're talking about a surviving spouse, then of course it's the surviving spouse's health. But what if you're married and the non-veteran is the one who is the one with more in need of more assistance? It's going to be based on the veteran's health.
Okay. So what I'm hearing once again is they should reach out to you, because you'll be able to give them a very clear, definite answer. Sure. Okay. So do you have a referral for someone in Nevada?
Why don't you reach out to me? Yes. I mean, I'm sure I can find someone. I know some people in some of the like Tahoe area. So let me think about that. I can get you in touch with someone.
Okay. So there you go, Lori. So if you just reach out, they'll be able to help you.
And just feel free to reach me out that number. And so I've got my paralegals, can get information to me, and I can get information to you as well.
Yeah. Joanne's great too. Yes. Awesome. All right. So gosh, I have to tell you, it has changed so much since I worked in memory care communities. And, I have to say, I'm glad some of it has changed. It opens up the benefit for more people and leaves more money available, which is great.
So, it used to be just $40,000 for survivors.
Yeah, it was
and $80,000 for married.
Right. It would, the income requirements were, I mean, I used to look at that and go, oh my gosh. So it's great that this has really opened up for people, but it is definitely, I'm going to stop your share here. Hang on. It is definitely something that can make a huge difference if you need it. So
so I encourage you to look into it, and nothing else. Just so you can, if you do a deep dive into it, at least you know your options.
Yeah.
And, and it's never too early to start. You may not need this now, but at least you know what to be looking at for the future. And it's always easier, like I said, to pre-plan an emergency and not know where to go. So I encourage you to just know what your options are. And I just thank you so much for spending your time with me today.
Well, everyone, why don't you guys unmute yourself? Let's show our appreciation for Marcie for being here with us today.
Thank you.